to the Putting Your Business on the Map podcast. This is the podcast for land surveyors that own or want to own a small business. My name is Landon Blake. I am your podcast host. Let's dive right into today's episode. This is part 2 of the episode we are recording on the topic, why do land surveyors work for starvation wages? In part 1, we talked about what starvation wages are, the difference between your hourly charge rates and your actual direct wage or your hourly wage. And we talked about, I can't remember, 6 or 7 reasons why I think surveyors end up working for not enough money, especially surveyors that own their own businesses and that primarily work in the residential market and the lot survey market, although it applies to a lot of other surveyors too. And one of the things we talked about in part 1 is the low fees in the lot survey market, pulls down the fees on the next level up, which might be, Alta surveys and small commercial developments and subdivisions. We also talked about some of the problems that this causes as a profession, and those are serious problems, with recruitment and retention, and with our reputation as a profession. And so this is try not to say so. It's my favorite word, whisker. I apologize. This is a major problem for our profession. In this episode, we're going to take a little more positive tack, and we're going to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4 things you can do as a land surveyor if you agree with me and you think this is a problem. What are 4 things you can do to help me fix it? What can we do as a profession to fix this? Then if we have enough time, I'm going to talk about the problem with invisibility, because I think that is a huge contributing factor here. And finally, I'll wrap up with, if I have time, with the story about what happened when my air conditioner broke. It was about 20 years ago my air conditioner broke, but it was a really powerful lesson in my life that still serves me to this day. So if we have time, I'll tell you about that story. Let's start with that first section of this part 2, this episode, which is how do we fix this problem? If you listen to part 1 and you agree with me that we tend to work for wages that are, for fees that are too low, and then conversely wages that are too low as surveyors. If you agree with that premise, how do we fix this? What do we do? So I have 4 things. I think I've talked about all of them on the podcast before, but we're gonna talk to them here. We're gonna wrap them up in a single package with a bow here. These 4 things. Here's 4 things I think we can do to help raise the fees that we work for as land surveyors. So, number 1 is we need to develop better business expertise. I've mentioned many times on the podcast, surveyors are not good businessmen or good business women, good business people as a general rule. We're just not taught. It's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is because I wanted to help surveyors be better business people. So you got to go out and you got to develop your business expertise. Listen to that episode we did that talks about the differences between business expertise and domain expertise. It will help you understand what you need to do. And there's some suggestions in that episode on some things you can do to improve your business expertise. But I'll mention a few things here, just 3. Think about your business model. I've talked about this before. If you're trying to just do a survey for whoever calls you up and needs a survey, you're probably not running an effective business model. You don't understand how you provide value. You haven't thought about your positioning strategy and the trade-offs that you need to make. So think about your business model. Look at the business model canvas. It's a great tool that will help you. Engage in marketing. Don't just write proposals. I talk to surveyors. I'm like, do you market? They say, oh yeah, I do marketing. They think writing proposals is marketing. That's not marketing. That's business development. Marketing is about your brand and the profession's reputation and communicating how you provide value and it's about the sales funnel. It's not writing proposals. Most surveyors don't do marketing, and that's why we take bad projects from clients who aren't a good fit because we don't do good marketing and we don't get good leads into our sales funnel. So engage in marketing. Don't just write proposals. That's number 2. Number 3, differentiate and specialize. Don't be the same as the surveyor down the street from you. Be different. Think about your core capabilities. I mean, we all know that we're expert measurement makers, but what does that mean? What are your closely related core capabilities to your measure, your ability to measure? And how do you use those core capabilities to add value? And having a core capability does not a profitable business make. There's a lot of other things that get layered on there. I think you need a core capability, but there's a lot of other things that get layered on that to make a viable and profitable business. Consider what your core capabilities are and how you use those to differentiate and specialize. That's number 3. Number 4, just manage your cash flow better. Go back, I think it's episode 4, we talk about cash flow. Go back and listen to that episode. Did a whole episode on cash flow early on because it's really important. What I talked about in part 1 of this topic, sometimes we take projects we shouldn't take that end up not being profitable or as profitable as they should be because we just need to get money immediately. And that has to do with poor cash flow management. Yeah, that's not the client's fault. That's our fault because we don't do good cash flow management and then we take on a job that isn't a good fit for our business. So manage your cash flow better. So those 4 things fall under that bullet point here in my outline of how we fix this. We become better business people. We develop better business expertise. If you think about your business model, you engage in marketing, you differentiate and specialize, you manage your cash flow, you're going to be more profitable because you're going to do work for the right type of clients and your fees are going to come up. You'll get paid more because you find a better fit. All right. Point number 2 on how do we fix this? Simple, 2 words, say no. It's difficult. I know it is. It's difficult. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before. My partner and I talk about it. I had a surveyor one time in a webinar. I was teaching a webinar, I think, for our professional association, state association. And I was talking about the need to, be a better business person and not give away a bunch of free advice. And he said something like, I think that's wrong. I'll spend as much time on the phone with anybody that calls up here with a question about a surveyor. With a question about a survey. Now, he has good intentions. And I'm not saying that I don't ever have a phone call with somebody without asking for money. But my guess is that surveyor spends way too much time talking to clients that aren't serious about hiring him. And he works for starvation wages because he spends way too much of his time doing that when he could be working for paid clients. So that's a problem. So we just have to learn to say no. And it's hard. We don't want to do it. We want to be good people. We love what we do. We're passionate about what we do. And we want to help. That's one of the most important things I've learned the last 5 years. I just have to say no. I have to say no to bad clients. I have to say no to bad projects or projects that aren't a good fit. And I have to say no when people ask me for free advice or consulting. I have to learn to do it. And it's not easy. Especially if it's somebody that you might have a little bit of a relationship with. It's hard enough to do that on the phone sometimes. Yeah, I have friends and family who will occasionally ask me for help with a real estate deal or a survey. And most of the time I just have to tell them, no, I'm sorry. Let me refer you to somebody because you're going to want a bunch of free, you trust me, you don't want to pay me what it takes. And I don't want to ruin a friendship or family relationship. Like I either will do it as charity for you and then we go in knowing it's charity and that you owe me, you owe me a favor, or I just need to refer you to somebody. It's just hard to say no to people that you care about, but you got to learn to do it. So say no. People are going to ask you all the time for free advice and consulting. It happens to me multiple times a week from other surveyors and potential clients, and I've just learned that I have to say no. And this is related. This is the third thing we can do. Number 3. It's related to saying no. Demand compensation when you provide value. I tell people, get paid like a lawyer. I talked about that in part 1. Get paid like a lawyer. You get one conversation with a lawyer usually, and then you are sending them a retainer and a legal, you're signing a contract, and it's not a $500 retainer. Most of the time, it's thousands of dollars. I've had to hire attorneys a couple times in my life, and It's never been less than a few $1,000s to get them to get them to talk to you about the problem you need solved. And surveyors should do that. We're always giving away all that advice for free, and we shouldn't do it. It made me think about. I've talked about this a little bit, but we had a client, and I liked the surveyor. I think he was a good surveyor. Tries to be a good surveyor. Is a good surveyor. He was always calling up and having to spend a bunch of time proposing on work that he didn't have the budget for. He worked for a utility company. He either didn't have the budget for it, or he'd end up giving it to his in-house people, or he'd hire the low bid surveyor. And I liked him. I considered him to be a friend, and we did a little bit of work for him. But I finally decided I wasn't going to renew the on-call contract because he was just getting a bunch of value there. Project approach and scope development and estimation of fees that he just wasn't paying for, and I got tired of doing it and not getting anything from his side of the table, right? So I had to start getting paid like a lawyer. He needed to pay for that expert advice I was giving him. The other thing you can do here is tell people that your time costs money. I just have to tell people, I'm sorry. I'm running a business. I have insurance to pay and rent to pay and utilities to pay and employees to pay, and I have to charge for my time. I cannot just give you a bunch of my time and not have it paid for. And then you have to prove to people that you're serious about that, because they'll still try and take advantage even after you tell them. And I was laughing when I was putting together this part of the outline, because I thought about, the people that work for me, they're really good at helping me understand that I have to pay for their time. Like, they do not work for free. They want to get paid for every 5-minute increment that they work for me, and it better be on their pay stub. So, sometimes you gotta be that way with people that call up on the phone and want your help. Like, your employees want to get paid for every minute they're on your clock. You need to get paid for most of the time that you spend helping your clients solve problems, and you shouldn't be embarrassed about it. Your employees aren't embarrassed about charging you. We have some conversations sometimes with some of our team members here at RH, about, hey, you need to invest a little bit in your own skill set. I shouldn't have to pay for all your training and then have you turn around and demand higher wages for all the training I just paid for. So we tell them, we want people that are willing to invest a little bit in their own skill set on their own time. Man, sometimes I tell people that and they look at me like I sprouted horns and I'm holding a pitchfork, like I'm the devil. Like, how could I even, have the audacity or the gumption to imply that they might invest a little of their own time in their chosen profession? Those people want to get paid for every stinking minute they think about surveying. A lot of them. And so, you gotta turn that coin over and tell your clients that they need to pay for your time too. And you have to help people that take you seriously. And then the last thing, this is bullet number 4, is educate people on why you add value as a land surveyor. I think of all the professions in the design and construction arena, we probably do the worst job of this as surveyors. We do not do a good job of telling people why we add value. And so I have a couple examples here I give you. I tell people all the time, the person you talk to at the county or the city counter in what they call the land use planning department or the community development department, those are not land use planners. They call themselves land use planners, but they are not land use planners. Those are land use regulators. They don't plan anything. They regulate. That's what they do. They are there to tell you what you cannot do with your property. I tell people, I am a land use planner. You have a piece of property, I will sit down with you and evaluate the rules and regulations that apply to your property and help you figure out, I will help you come up with a plan for that property to increase the value of that property, whether it's rezoning or subdivision, or development. I'm a land use planner, not a land use regulator. I'm a land use planner. I'm going to go in there and try and help you figure out what's the maximum value you can get with a particular piece of property, given the regulations that apply to that piece of property. And there's all kinds of things that go into that. And I need help to do that. I might need help from a civil engineer, or from a property appraiser or a real estate broker, but I can put that team together. So I tell people all the time, if you need a land use planner, you need to hire a land surveyor, not the folks at the county planning department or city planning department are not there to help you get the maximum value out of your land. In fact, a lot of times they're there to help to do the opposite, especially in some of the more the more anti-development jurisdictions. Oh, how many people understand that? That's the value that we help provide as a land surveyor. Now, the flip side of that is I demand to be paid for that value. So I don't do surveys for somebody and then do all the land use planning for free. Hey, I will put together a zoning report and help you understand the land use regulations in the subdivision process, but I'm going to ask to be compensated for that. And I'm not embarrassed about it, and I don't think you should be embarrassed about it either if you're a land surveyor. And another thing I tell clients and potential clients is I'm here to keep your civil engineer from making dumb mistakes. Like, I'm here to keep your civil engineer honest, your design team honest, your civil and your structural, and they're not surveyors and they don't know what they're doing. They don't know about monument preservation. They don't know why good on-site permanent survey control is important. They don't understand surveying and easements and land title and real estate like I do. You need to hire me and I need to work directly for you as your consultant. I will help keep your design team out of trouble. Yeah. How many surveyors will tell a client that? Usually the surveyor is a sub, they're a sub of a sub or a sub of a sub of a sub, right? The civil's working for the architect who's working for the client and you're working for the civil. So you're a sub of a sub. I don't want to be a sub of a sub. I want to have a direct relationship with the owner because I'm going to keep the architect and the civil engineer honest and keep them from doing stupid stuff as it relates to design and construction in my domain. So that's clients don't understand that. We have to tell them that is a value that we provide, right? We have to demand a seat at the table. We should be sitting next to the architect and civil engineer. We shouldn't be, four levels down in the basement. When those conversations are being had about how to design and execute and build a project, we should be in the room with the seat at the table. Our expertise is that important, and it is not duplicated by the civil engineer or the architect, period, full stop. Those are examples of ways that we can educate people about the value that we bring as land surveyors. All right, so I've got some time. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the problem of invisibility because it's related to this problem that we have of working for starvation wages. And I'll tell you about a call I got. This is last week. I got a call from a gentleman who owns some property in Oakdale, which is where our headquarters is at. So I get lots of calls from people in Oakdale because that's where we're based. So he called me and he said, my neighbor got a survey and the surveyor hopped the fence and set a monument 15 feet inside my yard. And, I need a boundary survey. And I talked to him for a little bit. And I said, well, you probably don't need a boundary survey yet. What you probably need to do is talk to a land attorney and evaluate your options. And I talked to him for a few minutes. And he said, okay, yeah, you're probably right. I probably need to have you refer me to a land attorney. He said, can you just give me a ballpark of what this might cost? I said, look, if you've got a boundary dispute like this, I asked him, I knew what part of town he was in. I said, look, you're in an old part of town. I said, it can be a lot of work to do this right. I said, I don't know, somewhere between $8,000 to $12,000. Right? And the guy has a heart attack on the phone and he tells me, he said something like, well, I'm obviously in the wrong business. I should be a land surveyor. And I politely said something like, no, actually, you probably are in the right business. And I don't know what he did for work. I said, you're just ignorant. Like, you think that I'm running some kind of con game here, that I'm charging you $10,000 and putting $7,000 of that in the bank. And you just think that because you're ignorant. You have no idea what it takes to do what you're asking me to do. And that's why you think my fees are too high. And I got to thinking about that conversation I had with him, and I have conversations like that. And I'm polite, but I have to tell people, like, you have no idea what it takes to do what you're asking. That's why you're calling me to begin with. If you knew how to do it, you could go do it yourself. You wouldn't need me. But it got me thinking about this issue that we have with invisibility. Invisibility is great. Is a great superpower. Like if you're fighting crime at night, if you're a masked superhero fighting crime at night in your city, invisibility would be a great power. But it's a horrible thing for a profession. And one of the challenges we have as land surveyors is just a lot of what we do is just invisible to the client. That guy thought, how hard can it be? You show up with your phone, you open Google Maps, you walk to where the corner's at, and you hammer a piece of metal in the ground. I don't understand why that would cost $8,000 to $12,000. Well, yeah, because it's not that easy, is it, land surveyors? But see, he doesn't understand because that's typically especially on something like a residential lot survey, that's all the client sees. They just see you when you show up, you get your mag locator out, your pin finder, and you walk over, you find the pin, you dig it up, you dust it off, maybe you put a tag or cap on it, and you're there for 3 hours, and you send them an $8,000 bill, and they don't understand. That's why people don't want to pay reasonable money for a lot survey. Now, part of the problem is there's surveyors that will do that. That's all they do. I got one of them in town. I get calls after he's left, I get calls. Like, he comes out, dusts off a couple corners, tells somebody there's a building encroachment or a fence encroachment, and he charges $500 and he leaves. He didn't pull any deeds. He didn't look at, he didn't do good map research. He didn't evaluate unwritten rights. He's just, he's a fly-by-night operator. He's in town. He's one of my surveyors I know in town, in my town in Oakdale. Like, if that's what you get for $500, like, that costs $500. That's not a boundary survey, though. It's something else. It's fraud. That's what it is. I call it corner dusting, but I don't know what it is, but it's not a real boundary survey. But that's the problem. See, people assume that's all we're doing because they don't see all the research, planning for the field survey, analysis of deeds, resolution of the boundary, evaluation of unwritten rights, preparation of a technical report, preparation of a survey map. They don't see all that. They only see you the 3 hours you're there with a pin finder and what they think is a video camera on a tripod. So we have a problem with that invisibility. People only see a small portion of what we do. Now, so what's the consequences of that? Invisibility, we talked about it a little bit, but prices are low because people only want to pay for what they see. Right? So what happens when you have prices that don't reflect the actual value being provided? That's a lose-lose situation. Right? I talk a lot on this podcast about you got to look for win-win situations. Lose-lose situations are horrible. You want to avoid those. This is a lose-lose. When the landowner doesn't appreciate the value being provided because they don't see it because it's invisible, they want to pay a low fee. Right? And what the landowner doesn't understand is everybody loses there because what that does is it puts pressure on surveyors to cut corners to survive. Right? So everybody loses. The landowner gets a poor quality survey that doesn't really suit their needs, and the surveyor can't make a living wage. Lose-lose. Some of that is the result of the invisibility. Right? So you get low prices, unhappy clients, unhappy land surveyors. It's a lose-lose. We got to do a better job about not being so invisible. Right? We have to explain to our clients what is involved in a good boundary survey. Right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about in the next section, we got to help our potential clients comparison shop. So I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is our fault. Given this dynamic, this invisibility of a lot of our work, especially on boundary surveys, that applies to all surveys, but especially boundary surveys. What do? Surveyors fall into one of two camps usually. They're either in the cut corners camp, because that's how they survive. So they cut corners till they get sued or in trouble with their licensing board. Or they do the job correctly, but they don't make their work visible and they starve to death. And those are the two camps. Right? So we gotta break that paradigm. We gotta break that system and have a third camp of surveyors who make their work visible and that explain to the client how they provide value. So how can you do that if you're a land surveyor? 3 ways. 3 things you can do to make your work more visible. Describe the work you're going to do in your proposal. Don't have a 1-paragraph proposal that says perform a boundary survey. The client doesn't know what that means. We break that out at my shop. Boundary research, right? Field survey, boundary field survey. Evidence analysis and boundary resolution, preparation of technical report and survey map. We have, if I'm doing a proposal for a boundary survey, that has somewhere between 3 and 5 tasks, and I spell out in the scope what we're going to do, and we summarize it in the cover letter for people. So tell people the work you're going to do in your proposal, and then help your clients comparison shop. You just tell them, I don't have no problem telling people, hey, you should comparison shop. Make sure the other guy is doing these things that are in my scope, and here's what you need to ask for as part of your deliverable. I think that's fantastic. That raises the bar. Raises the standard of practice, right? So people, I am not at all worried about you comparison shopping as long as you compare apples to apples. Now, if you want to go out and tell me that you're getting a vehicle for way cheaper than my price, but I'm selling you a Toyota RAV4 and you're buying a moped, that's not going to work. But if you want to comparison shop the same kind of car, then we can, I have no problem with that at all. And I'm not always the cheapest. It may be that the other surveyor's doing just as good of a job as me, but he needs to work more, or he's a little closer to the job, or he just did a survey next door. There could be very valid reasons why you might get a better price from the surveyor down the street. And that's great. You should hire that guy then. I don't have a problem with that. That's a win-win for you and him or you and her, right? But most of the time, I find that's not the case. What's really going on is the guy down the street is cutting corners. And so the client is going to lose there, right? The client and the surveyor are both going to lose there. Another thing you can do to help make your work visible is provide the client with quality deliverables. I always give the client a technical report. Sometimes it's more than one, depending on what we're doing. Sometimes it's 3 technical reports. I might have a technical report on the control, one on the boundary survey, and one on the topo if we're doing a full design. But if we're just doing a boundary survey, they get a report. It talks about all the things we did, the documents where we did our research, the documents we obtained and reviewed, our analysis of the documents, the measurements we made, how we resolved the boundary, the deliverables we put together. It's all in the technical report. And then we provide them with the survey map. I don't do a boundary survey without a survey map ever, period, full stop. If I'm doing a boundary survey for you, you're getting a technical report and you're getting a map or an exhibit, even if I don't have to file it, because that's part of the tangible value I provide. And I don't do a boundary survey almost never anymore without a UAV photo background, because that makes such a huge difference to the end user, to the client. When they get your survey and they can see the easements and the boundary on a good high-resolution survey grade UAV orthophoto, it's just worth so much. I just won't do surveys now without it. Again, just going to review those 3 ways that you can make your work visible. Describe the work in your proposal that you're going to do. Help your clients comparison shop if they want to do that, and provide quality deliverables. All of that kind of removes that cloak of invisibility that will help raise prices, right? Raise fees, which is what we want. We want to get paid. We don't want to gouge. We're not trying to cheat anybody, but we want to get paid a reasonable profit to do a good job. And then the last thing, we talked about it a little bit, but we need to do this. We got to educate the public and other professionals. We're not just a guy with a fancy camera on a tripod, right? We are experts in the law, experts in history, experts in measurement, experts in land title and land use regulation. We have to constantly and consistently communicate that value to the public and to other professionals like architects and engineers. We just have to do it all the time. We do a horrible job of it. We just do a horrible job. Okay, to wrap up here, let's take a few minutes here and tell you a story, because my wife wants to go to dinner. I want to tell you that story about what happened with my air conditioner. This is about 20 years ago. It's about 20 years ago. My wife and I bought a home here in Stockton, and it was only about 5 years old, but they were building these homes cheap. They had cheap fences and cheap appliances, and so we'd only been in the house a couple months, I think, and the air conditioner broke. The HVAC system, so it's external AC unit, it broke. And if you haven't lived in this part of Central California before, you don't make it through the summer very long without an air conditioner. Temps here are regularly above 100 degrees. It's not the hottest place I've ever been, but that's pretty hot. Thankfully, it's a dry heat. But you need to have an air conditioner here or you're going to be pretty miserable. So I started calling around, and all I wanted was somebody to come out and look at my air conditioner and give me an estimate on what it would cost to fix. So I called the first place. I just got on the internet, called the first place here in Stockton, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll come look at your air conditioner and give you an estimate, but it's going to be $200." I was like, "What? $200 just to look at it?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right." They called the next place. "Yeah, we'll come look at your air conditioner and give you an estimate." I'm like, "Oh, great." They're like, "It's $200." I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, it's $200 to come give you an estimate." I'm like, "It's $200 to give me an estimate?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right." They called the next guy. Told him what was going on. He's like, "Yeah, I'll come out and take a look at it. I'll be there tomorrow." I'm like, "Great." He's like, "That'll be $200. I was like, "What?" So finally I realized I wasn't going to get an HVAC company in Stockton to come look at my air conditioner for free, to give me a repair estimate. Everybody wanted $200. Now, I don't know what happened. I suspect all these guys got together for burgers and beers one night at a local restaurant, and they all agreed they were going to charge $200 to give estimates. But see, now at the time, I couldn't believe it. Now, you know what I did? I paid $200 and had one of those guys come and give me an estimate. Now, how many estimates do you think I got? Yeah, I only got one because I didn't want to spend $600 getting 3 estimates. Right, but here's what I realized. Now 20 years later, what I realize is, man, those guys are really smart. They're really smart. You know what? It costs money to send a repair person in a van or a truck to my house to look at my AC and do some troubleshooting and give me an estimate. And they got tired of doing that for free for people that were like me, that were just tire kicking. Hey, I was tire kicking. And they knew that. See, they demanded compensation for value there, didn't they? They knew that the trip to my house to troubleshoot that problem with the air conditioner was worth money. Like, they were going to tell me what was wrong, how to fix it, and how much it would cost, and that was worth $200. And I know it was worth $200 because that's what I paid to get that information. But surveyors, see, we're not that smart. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. Surveyors, we are dumber than the air conditioner repairman. Than the air conditioner repair company. Could be a woman. Sorry. We are more foolish than the guy or gal fixing air conditioners. Because we just give all that value away for free over and over. We trip over ourselves to look at somebody's situation and read all the rules and regulations and tell them what they need to do and give them a price. And they're just tire kicking. Right? And it took me years and years and years to look back on that event in my young life. You know, I wasn't very old. I was 23, I think, or 24 maybe. And I look back on that now and I'm like, you know what? I might have been a little older than that. I might have been, I was 28. I look back on that now and I'm like, yeah, those folks running those air conditioning companies, those HVAC companies, they were smart and they had learned not to give away value for free. And so we need to learn to do that. We also need to learn to do that as land surveyors. I've got time to cover a couple more things here as we wrap up this part 2 on why surveyors work for starvation wages. And I want to talk about, when we look at other professions, do they have the same problem? And I've mentioned it before. I think surveyors are really bad at this. But I want to introduce you to 3 or 4 of the other consultants that I work with as part of my business and show you that they don't have this problem. And then I want to talk a little bit about charity work. And you may wonder, why would I want to talk about charity work or pro bono work on an episode about starvation wages? And it's because there is a connection there, which I'll explain in a minute. So I want to tell you about 3 or 4 of the people that work for me as consultants to help us run our business. So I'm going to tell you about Dave. I'm going to tell you about JC. And I'm going to tell you about Lewis. And there might be one more, but let me start with those 3. So Dave, I've talked about him on the podcast before. Dave is my IT guy. He does a fantastic job. He's full remote, but he takes care of all our computers and manages our Microsoft 365 and helps with computer setup and runs our firewall and antivirus and does our security monitoring, that kind of thing. Dave does a great job. I like him. I enjoy him. He's got a good personality. He's one of my favorite people to work with. Dave charges me for every minute he works on my business. If we call Dave with a problem, a printer doesn't work or we're having a hardware issue on a CAD workstation, Dave is more than happy to help with whatever problem I call him with. Almost whatever problem. He's going to charge me for that. And he's religious about it. Like, if he helps me on a Tuesday at 2 p.m., Wednesday at noon, I have an invoice from him and he wants it to be paid. He doesn't wait 2 months to send me an invoice. He doesn't even wait 2 days most of the time to send me an invoice. So we pay him a monthly fee per computer for the monitoring security, and then I pay him T&M for everything he helps us with. And he's not embarrassed about it. He just tells me, if you can't pay my bill, I'm not going to get on the phone with you. And I'm okay with that. He's running a business. He's got a family to feed. He's got, 2 or 3 kids and a wife. He's a great guy. He deserves to be paid for his time and his expertise. That's a cost of doing business, and I have to be aware of that. Same thing with my accountant. Got an accountant. I like him. He's a nice guy. His name's JC. He's our CPA. Does our taxes every year. Every time I go in and visit JC about a financial or accounting thing or a tax thing, I get a bill. Every time. He does my taxes every year. Every year I get a bill. JC does not feel obligated to do accounting work for me and not charge it. He charges it, and I want to be clear. There is no negotiation with Dave and JC. I don't get to haggle with them about their bill. They say, these are my hourly rates. I call them when I need help. They send me a bill, and I don't nitpick their bills. I don't say, well, you charge me 2 hours for this. I think it should be an hour and a half. They just wouldn't tolerate that. They would tell me you need to go find a different consultant. Lewis is our HR consultant. I pay Lewis a monthly retainer. It's not very much, a few $100s. He's our HR guy. And then when I call Lewis with a question, he sends me a bill. Or when my wife, she's our HR person. Monique's our HR person. When we don't do it very often, but every couple months we'll have a question come up. We're not sure about a law or situation with an employee. We'll call Lewis. Lewis is happy to help us, and he does a good job. And he promptly sends me a bill. We have a business attorney that I've been friends with for a long time. He's a good man, Dominic. Again, we don't call him very often, but every once in a while, if we have a question about a contract or we have an issue to handle with a vendor or client, it's getting a little heated. Sometimes we'll call him and just walk through our options, make sure we're being smart about stuff from a legal perspective. He does a great job. They have a retainer. They bill me T&M, and I don't haggle with them about the bill. I just pay it. Surveyors don't do that. We work without retainers, and we just give people all kinds of free help. And other professions just do not do this like we do. I think there is some of this in other design and construction related consultants, like architects and civil engineers and structural engineers. But you get outside of the design and construction world, and I just don't see this. And the other parts of my business, other consultants just do not have this problem. They expect to be paid, and they expect retainers, and if you call them, that the clock is running, and you better be organized and have your crap together because you're paying for every minute they spend with you. And they're not embarrassed about it, and I don't think they should be. And I don't think we should be as surveyors. We should be just like these other consultants. We should demand to be paid for our time, and we should demand the clients respect our time. Okay, so I want to wrap up with a little section about charity work. And I want to tell you this. And sometimes I tell my team members this, my employees, I tell them. Because sometimes we'll get clients or potential clients that come in, and everybody has a sad story. My grandma died. My car broke down. My neighbor's a bully. Can't you do this for half the price you told me? And most of these people, I tell my employees, most of these people own land in California. Most of them almost always live in a way nicer house than I live in. And I tell our team members, we don't owe those people charity. We don't. I don't owe rich people charity. And when I say rich, I don't mean fabulously wealthy, but if you own 20 acres or 40 acres of row crops in the Central Valley with a custom home, I don't owe you charity. You can pay for a survey, or for land use planning services or for expert witness services. I don't need to give you any kind of coupon deal. So the reason I mention that is I think surveyors get pressured into giving people discounts because they cry and sing a sad story, and it's a horrible habit. Don't do it. You don't owe anybody charity. So you don't owe rich people charity. You don't owe other businesses charity, and you don't owe your friends and family charity. Now, I've mentioned this before. I will occasionally do a survey for a friend or a family member. I always do that pro bono. If I'm going to do it, I do it pro bono or for people. Why? Why would I do that? Because those people are going to expect a discount from me, a coupon deal. That's just the way those relationships work. And I want to make it explicit. Like, look, either I'm doing charity for you and you owe me a favor, or you're paying full price. There's no in between. And I might do charity work for a friend or a family member. It depends on how busy we are and some other things that I got going on. But I don't do in between. I don't do coupon deals for friends and family. And I don't think you should either. Now, some of you are listening to this, you're thinking, man, Landon Blake's really stingy. He doesn't do pro bono work. He doesn't do charity work. That's not true. I do charity work. And I tell people that. We did a pretty extensive free survey and some land title work for the local gun club, Hunters Club here in Oakdale. We've done extensive surveys, free surveys for Conservation Land Trust in Nevada. I regularly volunteer to teach at surveying conferences, and I don't charge for that. I teach for free. So I tell clients, when they ask for coupon deals or charity, I tell clients I do charity work. You are not the type of organization I do charity work for. I'm doing charity work for a religious organization right now as we speak. I'm doing a boundary survey for them. If the Boy Scouts came in and needed a survey of their lodge, or the Chamber of Commerce came in and needed a survey because they were buying a building, I'd probably do that work pro bono. But I don't do pro bono for rich people, for farmers with land, or people that live in custom homes in the East Bay. I don't do charity work for those people. They can pay my bill, and they should be embarrassed to ask for a coupon deal because they don't deserve one and they don't need one. So one of the things I would tell you that you can do that will help keep your fees and your wages reasonable is put a firm wall between charity work and regular client work. Make it explicit, and maybe have some guidelines like, hey, these are the types of organizations we do charity work for. And then you can look at somebody who's asking for a coupon deal and you can say, I'm sorry, we have a set of guidelines on who we do charity work for, and you don't meet the requirements. Right? I think that's a really good idea. So to kind of wrap up this episode, this part 2, we're not helping anybody when we work for low fees because we love what we do. And I understand, as I mentioned at the beginning, I love land surveying. I'm passionate about it. There's nothing I would rather do. But I'm not going to do it and starve to death. There are other things I will do. I will teach. I will write code. I will do legal research. I will do permitting and entitlements. I will manage a construction project. There's a lot of other things I can do that will pay good money. I am not going to survey for starvation wages, and I don't think you should either. As we close out the episode, we just want to give you guys a few reminders. First, we want to let you know where you can find the podcast episodes. The podcast home on the web is at my personal website, landonblake.com. If you head there and look under the Learn menu, you'll find a link for the podcast
That homepage for the podcast has all of the episodes. You can download those in MP3 format if you'd like, or read the show notes. You can also find the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon Music. So if those are your preferred, one of those is your preferred distribution channel, you can find the podcast there. We also want to let you guys know, if you'd like to sponsor the podcast, you can reach out to me, sunburn.surveyor@gmail.com. You can also send me questions, comments, thank yous, topic suggestions for the podcast. I regularly get that kind of feedback from listeners, and I dig it. I appreciate hearing from you guys, so I encourage you to do that. We also have a Patreon page. If you cruise over to Patreon, you can search for On Point Workshops, and you will find the podcast there. You can, for a small monthly donation, I believe right now it's $10 a month, you can support the podcast and get access to what we call PYB OTM Extras. So those are extra videos, short audio files, and even full episodes of the podcast. And that support on Patreon allows me to keep Carly around. Carly is the fantastic young lady that helps me edit the podcast and maintain the podcast website. We'd like to keep her around, so we appreciate your support on Patreon if you're able to do that. And thank you for being a listener.